my business 10 years ago in 2011. And over the period, I've had to also personally rebrand myself. So not so much in the BTD years, but prior to that, I was in advertising, I was in branding, I had other careers. And so I've published a book, I've done a TEDx talk, but over that journey, I've had to also reinvent who I am so that I can step into the goals that I wanted to do. And so we're going to look at what is a brand, how do you become a brand, how do you reinforce it, and how do you create it? So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to ask you, and guys, and let's be as interactive as we can, even though we're remote. So I want you to think about some of the brands or the branded products you've used since you woke up this morning. So if you can just put in the chat for me, what are some of those brands you've come into contact with? It could be something you're wearing, something in the house. It could be a beauty product. It could be your toothpaste. It could be a cereal. Can you guys put in the chat some of the brands you've interacted with? Wow, okay, we got Aquafresh, we got Josie Blue Coffee, we got Colgate Organics, House of Coffee, Nescafe. Thank you very much. Right, so if I said to you, I don't know if you can see it, no, never with these backgrounds. If I showed up my Apple iPhone and I said to you, okay, what words or images do you think of when you hear Apple? So again, just quickly, can you put in the chat, what are the words, like the first association that pops into your mind when you think of Apple iPhone? What do you think of? Wow, you guys are amazing. Apple, slick, music, iPad, iStore, fantastic. So I'm going to stop share. I'm going to share again. Right. So would you also agree? I could say Steve Jobs, I could say innovation, and expensive always comes up. So let's get on here. What is a brand then? Because really what it is, it's a promise. It's a promise of the value that you know you're going to get for that product. It commands higher value, but really what a brand is, it's a sorting device. Because if I said to you, I'm going to give you two choices, there's Coca-Cola, or there's just a no-name bottle, with a red ribbon around it, which one are you going to go for? Naturally, we're going to go for Coca-Cola. Why? Because it's the promise of happiness and joy and thirst quenching. But also what brands do is they create emotional bonds with us. So I'm definitely not putting this in the chat, but if I said to you, Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Bulls, Chiefs, Pirates, Sharks, one of these names are going to resonate with you. And that's what an emotional bond is to a brand. When they win, we're on top of the world. When they lose, don't talk to us. And that's what the power of branding does. So now if I said to you, let's talk about people who've become brands. Would you agree that these people are definitely brands? And so in the interest of time, if I said, right, let's take Oprah Winfrey. What words or images do you think of when I say Oprah? And I'm sure you'll agree if I say things like humanitarian. Everybody look under your seat. You've got one and you've got one. And she's a giver. She's a listener. She's incredibly wealthy. We know that. But those are the things we think of with Oprah. And Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, said it best. And he said, a brand for a product is like a reputation for a person. So think about that. Because in the same way, these brands created these images in our minds, so do you. And what we're going to chat about this morning is how do you create the desired words that come into people's minds when they think about you? So in other words, what do you have to do to become a brand? And the reason why this matters is because as business owners, your potential supplier, client, customer, they have to buy into you first before they're going to buy into your business. And your brand is the promise you make, implicitly or explicitly. So what do people expect of you when they engage with you? Because brands that keep their promises are consistent and trustworthy. And from the minute you engage with your suppliers, your customers, Even the ladies at Pick and Pay or Woolies checkout counters, you have a brand. Because you're either branded as the impatient customer on the phone who's not listening, or you're branded as the smooth professional who gets the job done. And our brand is a story, and it's a story that helps other people tell themselves a story about you. And most of the time, these stories aren't true because no one knows you as well as you do. So it's up to us to consistently and persistently show up in a way that amplifies our brands. Because your brand isn't what you say about yourself, it's what everyone else is saying about you. Sorry, and I didn't mention in the beginning of the presentation, I will send the slide deck to Tracy to distribute to everyone. So don't worry about copying down these notes. But guys, we've got to position our brand because it will be positioned by others. And the starting point, okay, where do I go? What do I do? How do I become this brand? Is think about, if I said to you, what do you want to be known for? So when someone thinks about you, what are the words that you want to come into their mind? What do you want to be known for? You know, words like, is it being trustworthy? Is it being reliable, loyal, creative, dependable? What are the words that come into your mind? And I really want you to sit and think about this, and equally what you don't want to be known for, because that informs it as well. And the reason we do this exercise, and I know, you know, if we were face to face, we could be sharing the names and sharing what we're doing, but we've got to be really deliberate about how we're choosing to show up, because we can't leave it up to other people who decide who we are. And, you know, we can't walk around with a t-shirt that says dependable, reliable, trustworthy, ambitious. Our brand is experiential. And we're experienced moment by moment, second by second, and interaction by interaction by the people we influence and who influence us. And so this is why we need to start becoming really aware of our behavior, because it's everything we do and say that is communicating our brand. And the disconnect happens is when you say, well, I really want to be known for this. But if the behavior is not congruent, we're not going to show up like that. So what's the gap? How do we bridge between, you know, if you think when you walk into a room, how do you think people perceive you? And then it's about saying, okay, well, if that's how they perceive me, is there a gap between how I want to be perceived and how do we start to unpack this? Because, you know, it's almost having that third eye, thinking that, is what I'm about to do going to positively impact the way that I'm perceived? And if we can start becoming more mindful about what are we saying, how are we showing up, how are we portraying ourselves, that's how we're going to start to create the brand we want. And it's not about manipulation. This is all about intention. Right. So what's the roadmap for today? How are we going to do this? Our brand is made up of the honor, integrity, and the skills and knowledge and the consistency we bring. And consistency is really important. We'll talk about that a lot today. But then central to our brand, number one is accountability. So we can't blame other people for the way we react. That is all on us. It's about self-awareness. Okay, where are my strengths? Where are my blind spots? Where do I need to work on? Am I aware of what my blind spots are? And then attitude is central to all of this, because our attitude is a choice and it's the way we view the world. And we can choose to have an attitude of self-motivation or self-defeat. And you made that choice when you woke up this morning. But if you think about the people that you work with, right? Those people that have got that positivity, that go-giver, that can-do attitude, those are the people we want to rally around. But now equally, you know, I don't know if any of you saw the movie Harry Potter. Well, I think it was number 3, when there were the Dementors. So in the movie, the Dementors are these creatures that when they walk away from you, it's like the soul has been sucked out of you. And my question is always, do you know someone like that? You have a conversation, right? But they walk away and you feel drained because they're negative. And that's the attitude that they bring, but you don't, but the image that you associate with them, they're negative, they're draining, and that becomes part of their brand. And that's why attitude's so important. So what else are we going to unpack? Our physical presence, our virtual, interpersonal. There's actually an extra one, which is intrapersonal, and our social presence. Now, with branding, we never get to a point where we go, right, I'm there, I've done it, I've made it, my brand is great, I never need to work on it again. Because you can see with the picture sitting on the slide is that we never get to that point. And we always need to be consistently aware of the decisions and the choices we make. But having said that, we are human and we are fallible and we are going to make mistakes. But how do you show up as a powerful brand? It's how you own that mistake. So this campaign happened 2 years ago in the UK. KFC changed suppliers, couriers. And what happened is that they ran out of chicken around, I think it was about 800 stores across the country. And instead of blaming and naming and shaming and saying, well, you know, this courier company is the reason we couldn't deliver, they went, we're sorry. This is what's happened. This is the situation. And this is what we're doing to fix it. And so don't think that you need to be perfect. We are going to be fallible, but often the way you manage a mistake can make you even more powerful in the eyes of your customers. Because branding, it's not something you do. It's who you are and it's how you show up. So if we think about our physical presence, the message we send out every day is shaped by the way we choose to dress, the way we hold ourselves, and the way we connect with others. So you may as well send out a message that presents the best version of you. Now, if you look at this slide, right, it's quite obvious. You know, we can see on the slide who's showing up physically, who's not. But this isn't about budget. This isn't about how fancy or what I'm wearing. It actually, physical presence is a trust issue. Because if you look at the guy and the woman sitting on the left, if they came up to you and, imagine he was a pilot and he said, right, ladies and gents, I'm so excited to start the flight this morning. You would be, when we can fly again, you would be running to another airline. But think about the pilot. How does he show up? He's groomed and he's got the uniform and there's this aura of authority that you trust him. You trust him with your life. And that's how you need to start thinking about dress. And especially now when we're dealing remotely, for me, I know that whether I'm presenting, whether I'm meeting a client, I will show up as if I was going to meet that person in face-to-face because I'm building trust, whether it's remote or whether it's not. And it's also about, dress is the impact you want to make on the room. So it's not about you need to go put on this, fancy pinstripe suit. Yes, you're at home, but you want that person to think, to have that trust in you and to go, I trust you with my business. What else from a physical point of view? It's just about that authenticity. And this is my favorite quote from Seth Godin. And really, it's just about you are being consistent in how you show up. Whether, I love it when you act the same way, whether you feel like it or not, and especially when you don't. So in every interaction, are you showing up as the same person? If you say you're going to deliver on something, are you doing that every single time or every kind of, 3 or 4? What else in terms of the physical presence? Often, when you think about it, it's not just the way you show up physically, but it's the verbal, which is what you say, and the nonverbal, which we're not saying. And what I'm going to share with you this morning is what I call a series of BLOs, which is blinding lights of the obvious. And a lot of the stuff, guys, you're going to say, well, I know that. Well, that's not new. But to show up as a powerful brand is often about those just pushing it up a notch, those little edges. And it's often the things we know, but that sometimes we forget to implement. And so when a message is communicated, research by Professor Maharabian in UCLA said, when you're communicating, only 7% of what you're saying accounts for how that message is received. The rest is your tone of voice, your body language, the nonverbal. And so some things to think about when you're building your brand from a verbal point of view is manners matter. It's those basics of please and thank you. And even if they're doing what they were supposed to do, but it's about acknowledging it. I always love to use the example when you're driving in traffic. And if it's an afternoon and there's a lot of traffic and you can see that person who's indicating to come in front of you and you think, okay, I'm going to be a nice person, and you let them in. All you want to see are those hazard lights going off to say thank you, because then you feel validated that you let them in. But when they don't say thank you, you're so annoyed. And so it's the same thing in the day-to-days. Are we just doing the basics, please, and thank yous? Are we giving credit where it's due? Wow, thanks so much. Couldn't have done this without you. And also mind what you're shutting down. So when you're in a meeting, a brainstorm, a team meeting, just be careful of being that person who's going, well, this can't be done. This is impossible. This will never work. Where can you be the problem solver? But then it's also the other 55%, right? The nonverbal, what we're not saying. Because whether you're showing up remotely or in person, people are going to make a decision really quickly about what they're seeing. So think about what you're telling them. And some things to consider with the nonverbal is our body language. And you can see the top row are what we call power poses, high power body language. And the second row is low power poses. And Amy Cuddy did a brilliant TED talk, and they did an experiment. She's based in New York. And they said, we know mind influences body. Can body influence mind? And what they did is people stood in these power poses for 2 minutes. And at the end of 2 minutes, what they found was that testosterone went up and cortisol, the stress hormone, went down. And so what she says is, can you use your physiology to boost you? So maybe before a courageous conversation, a presentation, a pitch, can you just stand, with the Wonder Woman pose or the victory pose, and let your physiology work for you? But more importantly, is that our body is a sign of personal power. And even if you're sitting remotely, if I'm slumping in my chair, this woman's sitting at the bottom, how are you even interacting online? What is the message you're sending to your team about yourself? So be so aware of body language. Things like eye contact. We'll talk about cameras being on a bit later, but eye contact is so important. It's signaling I'm with you, I'm present with you, I'm giving you my attention. But then also it's about preparation. So before you meet a client, maybe you're meeting a new potential client, did you go onto LinkedIn and look them up? Have you seen, number one, are they a man or a woman? Because sometimes the names can be a little bit ambiguous. Read about them. What do they enjoy? What are their interests? The business, the company, what are the trends? What's happening now with COVID? Is there something you should know about? And when you arrive that way and you say, wow, I saw that you wrote a really interesting post about global warming. I thought you'd enjoy this. They're already going, wow, this person's done their homework. And often all that stands between you and what you want is a better set of questions. But more important than preparation is also participation. So again, if you're sitting in an opportunity to brainstorm, to meet with a client, whatever it is, are you sharing your value? Because that is how you display your brand, is when you say, this is what I think and this is why. This is my suggestion. This is my recommendation. We all have that little voice in our head that's going, but what if I sound silly? I had a coaching client this week who her dream was to be sitting on a non-executive, as a non-executive director on a board. And she got invited to this appointment. And she said she spent the entire first meeting terrified to open her mouth because she didn't want to come across silly. But that was a wasted opportunity. And so, this is what I think and this is why. And if you don't take those opportunities, you're going to become a no-name brand, which is amazing for Pick and Pay dishwashing liquid, but not for you. And what happens is you do not want to be labeled as, he's really nice, she's really sweet, but they don't say anything. So think about what your lack of participation can do to your brand. And the last element, which really makes a big difference, is being punctual. So think about, is there that person in your life who's always 20 minutes late? And so you'll end up lying to them and saying, something starts earlier so that they come on time. But how do you start to associate them? Unreliable, untrustworthy. And so just be really aware of just prepare, check your internet connection, check the links, check you've got everything 10 minutes before, be logged on so that no one's waiting for you. Because what you don't want is they're thinking, well, if they can't even arrive on time for the meeting, how can I trust them with my business? And then again, it's your work. It's what you're putting out there. So consistency in your story, in your delivery, in your promise. Be transparent if there's a delay. There's going to be a delay. This is what's happening. Own the mistakes. Own whatever, if something's gone wrong. Rather take accountability for it. This is what I'm doing to solve it. This is how I'm going to manage the expectation. And then really, this is all about building trust, but especially now where we're at is the human touch. And it's so easy to get lost behind email, and it's so easy to just send a WhatsApp because it's quick. But if you can start to pick up the phone, if you can start to have a little bit more human touch, it will go ways to building and strengthening relationships. So I love this quote this is another one from Seth Godin, where he says, excellence is what keeps you awake. Excellence is what lets you sleep well. Excellence is a moving target. Excellent is that which knows no bounds. Excellent always. If not excellence, what? If not excellence now, when? And it's not an aspiration, but excellence is the next 5 minutes. So now we're going to move on to our interpersonal presence. How are we showing up to stress and conflict? And it's a really important question because you could tick all the boxes in terms of the verbal, in terms of the nonverbal, but the way you deal with conflict is incredibly important because your image could be, this person's really hard to deal with. They are so difficult to work with. And you don't want that to form part of your brand. So, sorry, guys, can I just ask everyone to mute themselves? So when dealing with conflict, it's about knowing yourself. Seek first to understand and assume positive intent. So what that means is when it comes to a courageous conversation, dealing with stress, you want to react to the outcome, not to the event. What does that mean? What do you want out of this conversation? Do you just want to be right? Or is there a greater goal involved? And I'll share a story that demonstrates this. So it was a few years ago. I had a meeting with a charity organization, and they called me in to brainstorm some fundraising ideas. And it was a Monday morning. I remember it clearly. It was pouring with rain. Traffic was shocking because they were doing roadworks. And I walked into the building, and as I was walking in, my client, we'll call her Sue, was walking past me. And I said, Sue, don't we have a meeting now? And she said, you know what? I've got such a migraine. I just want to go to the clicks and go home. And I said, oh, and where's Carol? Because there was another lady joining us. She said, I don't know. There was some emergency. And 15 minutes ago, she left the building. And I literally took a breath and I said to myself, what do you want to be known for? And I said, I'm really sorry you're not feeling well. I walked her to her car. I said, next time you'll come to me. We do good cappuccinos. And she really appreciated the way that I responded. And that's reacting to the outcome. But do not get me wrong. When she walked through that door and didn't bother to phone me, WhatsApp me, anything to say, let's reschedule, I was angry and I was frustrated. Like you guys, you plan your days. But I had to override it because I knew what was more important. And if I reacted to the event and I said, but why did you just waste my whole morning? Why didn't you phone me? I would get branded as a very rude person. Even though it was her responsibility to rather have canceled, it was my choice in the moment. And it's about pushing that mental pause button, slowing yourself down in those high pressure moments and really make the right decisions at the time. So I'm sure you've seen this quote before from Viktor Frankl when he said, between a request and a response is a pause. You never have to answer immediately. And from the pause is an understanding of how to respond rather than react. And, especially now, pressures are mounting. There's stress like we've never known before. Think about when you get a rude email or a rude WhatsApp. Number one, our tempers are a little bit heightened than they normally are. But what do we want to do? I'm angry. And so you want to respond to that text straight away. You want to respond to that email because you want to show them. But if you slow it down and you write that mail, but you save it in your drafts and you don't look at it until the next morning, I promise you, you will not send that mail. And that is the difference between showing up as a great brand, because in that split second of anger, reacting on emotion, you can never take it back. And it's in cyberspace and it's there forever. So be aware, we've got this incredible body wisdom. Often think about when you get upset. Do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel it? My throat closes when I'm getting really upset. Is it in are your fists clenching? Where do you feel it? And if you can start tapping into that body wisdom and going, oh, okay, I can feel myself getting a little bit heated. In body language, we always talk about taking up space as a power move, but slowing down in those really high pressure moments is the most powerful thing you can do. And so this is really about self-reflection. This is about saying, okay, is there always conflict in my life? What am I bringing to the table? Is it always somebody else's fault? And it really is just about the self-awareness to go, okay, maybe it is me. Maybe I'm taking things too personally. But it really is just having that honest conversation. Is this a steady theme in your life? Okay, what can I start doing to change that about my brand? And again, all better questions. Is delivering this message consistent with how I want to be known? Do you need to have that conversation? Do you have to prove you're right? So think about these things the next time you go into these kind of moments. And it's not to say let people take advantage, but it's when we have these discussions, are we doing it based on fact, not based on emotion driving us? And the way to be a powerful brand starts with feedback. Are we asking for feedback? Jack Canfield has a brilliant suggestion. And he says, could you go to, and it doesn't even have to be only in your workspace. It could be your role as a parent, as a spouse, as a partner, as a friend. You could say, how would you rate me this week as a partner? And they could say, well, like an 8 out of 10. And you could say, okay, so what will it take to make me a 10 out of 10? Ask for feedback in that way. And that's how we learn about ourselves. That's how we discover blind spots. But then equally, it's about when you are on the other side and you are the one giving the feedback. Are you aware of how you're giving it? So, if someone was giving you feedback and said, geez, you really did not do a good job with that client the other day. You already put a barrier up. Doesn't matter what they say next. But if they said to you, wow, you've been doing such a great job on this, this, and this. This is really, I was impressed with that. The one thing I wanted to chat to you about was how that client meeting went. Can we talk about it? Now you're open. So I think it's just remembering, what does it feel like to get that feedback? And because we're all going to be mentors and mentees in our worlds at different times. Are we thinking about that? Now, a question I always love to ask, especially when it comes to branding, is, are you okay saying no? And most of the time, we're not comfortable saying no. And we don't want to say no because we want to be liked. And I'm speaking about branding and showing up and being amazing. And often what happens is we think, well, if I say no, I'm going to sabotage myself. How can I say no? But the thing is to remember is that, as I said, we're stretched enough as it is. And if we're not setting boundaries in place, we are the ones who are going to burn out. So it's not about, you can say no, but it's how do you do it? And in Own Your Space, the book that I showed earlier, we speak about something called the yes sandwich. And the yes sandwich has 3 layers. It's where you positively acknowledge the person's intent. 2 is where you graciously say no. And 3 is optional, where you can offer an alternative. So in the real world, it would look like this. Do you want to come to a networking event after hours, whether it's online or in person? And the way you can respond is to say, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so swamped at the moment. I've got something else on. You know what? That's my special family time. Please think of me for the next time because I would love to be there. And so it's not the fact of saying no, but it's how we're delivering it. And if you're one of those people who just no cannot get off your tongue and you just people please and yes slips off too quickly, you can say, let me check my calendar and I'll come back to you. Because often what happens, someone asks us if we can do something. And in this need to please, we say, sure, I'll do it tomorrow. But you know that you don't have the capacity and you've just put yourself under so much pressure. And what happens is that if you want to compromise quantity for quality, you will compromise quality for quantity. And if you hand in something that's mediocre, you are sabotaging your own brand. So try this. Someone says, can you do this for me? You could say, you know what? My schedule is swamped until Friday. Would Monday morning work? And I promise you, 9 times out of 10, they will say, oh, yeah, that's fine. Monday's fine. And if it's urgent, we'll deal with it. But let that be the exception. If your boss or, someone superior says to you, because this always comes from my corporate clients, what if it's my boss? You could say, well, I'm working on this, this, and this. If I take this on, one of these has to lose my priority. Where do you want me to focus? And so it's just, can you take ownership? Are you comfortable saying no? Are you trying to avoid conflict to the point where you are just, you hating your days because you're taking on too much? So it just is about setting boundaries and managing expectations. Even in your personal life, am I saying yes out of guilt or fear? And if you're saying yes out of guilt or fear, you probably should say no. Think about how many times you committed to a weekend plan and you arrive at the lunch or the whatever, and you're just thinking, why did I say yes to this? I could be at home with my kids. I could be at home relaxing. So, and especially weekends, because that's where we need to recharge and recover. And just ask yourself, is what I'm saying yes to, is it going to excite me? Is it going to add value? And start to take ownership over what. Don't give away the yes so easily. Start to own your no's. And not even me, even Warren Buffett said that the difference between successful and really successful people is the really successful people say no to almost everything. So something else to think about when we're talking about stress and tension is, again, these are reflective questions. What happens to you under stress? So often we are the worst version of ourselves when we are stressed. How do you react when other people are under stress? What qualities in people bother you? How do you handle them? So if you know you are on a deadline and now we're home, you can't escape to the office. Maybe you can. But for most of us, we're in one environment. So if you know, I've got to work on this, and if your, poor child or partner or whoever, or the phone rings and it's your mom, before you bite their head off because you are so under the gun, think, okay, I know I'm stressed. How am I going to react? Can you remove yourself? Can you go sit in the garden? Can you change environment? Knowing how you manage stress, what can you do to not let that derail you? And another great quote from Robert Frost is he said, you're educated when you have the ability to listen to almost anything without losing your temper or self-confidence. So we've spoken about how do you show up physically? How do we show up interpersonally with other people? But this is probably one of the most important sections, which is how do we show up intrapersonally? How do we show up to ourselves? And confidence starts in the mind, and it starts with the thoughts we tell ourselves. Now, research says we have anywhere between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day. So, gents, I always think you play in the 12,000 space, and ladies, we kind of the north of 60,000. But what the research says is that most of these thoughts, number one, 80% are negative, battling guilt, the inner critics, and they tend to repeat themselves. So this 80% of negative thinking, we are repeating day after day after day. And so when you find yourself in the spiral, 3 steps: stop, challenge, choose. So stop yourself. I'm not good enough. This is never going to happen for me. How am I going to survive this? Stop and challenge the thought. Is this really true? Or is this my irrational thinking? And most of the time, it's our irrational thinking. You are good enough. And then choose another thought to replace it. And I'm not saying lie to yourself and positive psychology and I'm amazing, and you're going, you're right. Having that, knowing that destructive thought is there means you need to change it. It's not serving you. What can you do that's better? So you want to create an anchor thought. And an anchor thought is something that is going to ground you so that you don't let those looping, spiraling thoughts take over. So it can either be a picture or it can be an affirmation. It can be a phrase. It can be something that when you find your mind going to that place, the negative space, you want to move it straight away. So I know that if I'm going to give, when I had to give a really big presentation and I was so nervous and I could feel the nerves, I closed my eyes before I went on and I had the picture in my mind of sending my husband a message afterwards saying, nailed it. And I walked in feeling confident. Another thing is you literally can turn fear into excitement because it's the same physiological response. Think about when you've been on a roller coaster, what happens? The butterflies in the stomach and your palms are sweaty and you can feel your heart's beating fast. And then think about a first date. Think about when you got a really great promotion. Think about, so it's the same thing, that first date or that interview or whatever, and you got the job. It's those butterflies. It's the same physiological response. And if you say to yourself, I'm excited to do this talk today. I'm excited to present to this client. I'm excited to pitch. You're giving your brain a context because then your brain is going, oh, Laurie's just excited, and you ease into it. And what you start to do is when you reframe your stress differently, you show up differently. Instead of seeing it as, oh my God, my heart's beating and I'm going to mess this up. It's almost about seeing it that I'm rising to the level of the stress. My stress is there. Those symptoms are there to boost me. It gives you more oxygen. It gives you clearer thinking. So be really aware of what are you telling yourself. And when you find yourself going into that space, to move it straight away. And thoughts are really important because thoughts are our thoughts and our beliefs are the operating system of how we run. So if you think about your phones, we don't care if it's if it's IO 10, 11, whatever they're on now. You just want your phone to work. But our operating system is going to run on the thoughts we tell ourselves. And if we haven't stopped to check in and go, okay, is this actually serving me? Because your phone gives you a message and it goes, we are updating the software tonight at midnight. It sorts that out. Ours is manual. We're in manual mode. We have to go, okay, is this really serving me? And what is the story you're telling yourself? Is it, I'm too old, I'm too young, I could never do this, I'm terrible with technology, I should have done this in my 20s, I'm an introvert, I'm a bad public speaker. Your mind is eavesdropping all the time. And the problem with these stories is that affects what you're going to show up to. And if that's your brand, if you're listening to the story that you're terrible with technology or you're bad at public speaking, when an opportunity comes up, you're going to go, no, I can't do that. So it's really about reframing the beliefs. Is this working? Is this true? And start to change the story, because when you can change the story, you're going to change what you're prepared to show up to. And again, it's not just, it's not just how we're showing up. It's not just about the clothes, the way we're dealing with other people. A lot of it is managing our headspace to be a powerful brand. And I talk about anxiety, and I'm not talking about chronic anxiety where you do need to see a professional. I'm talking about those everyday, those looping thoughts. We're sitting with so much tension and anxiety at the moment. And what anxiety is, this comes from Chip Conley's book called Emotional Equations. And it's what we don't know by what we can't control. And think about it. And I know when anxiety hits me, I'm either too future focused or my desire for control is too amplified. And anxiety is not a character defect. It is an emotion that hits very high functioning people because we all want control over our worlds. So what do you do? What do you do when you're starting to feel those looping thoughts and the spirals going? You're going to do an anxiety audit. So what do I know? What I don't know? What can I influence and what I can't control? So what I don't know, can I reach out to someone? Look at this incredible community AutoJet has created. Surely there is a professional, there's someone that I can reach out to. Okay, what can I influence? And I think the trick to owning your days and to really making sure that you're showing up to yourself the best way you can is when you let go of what you cannot control and influence. If you need to have a hard discussion, if you need to speak to a client about you've got to raise your fees now because of the situation, you can't control how they're going to react, but you can plan and you can practice having that conversation ahead of time. You can role play it in your head. You can ask a friend if you can practice having the conversation. So prepare yourself as much as you can. But it really is that letting go. And sometimes all you can control in the moment is your breathing, and your breathing is enough to calm you down. So what can we control during this time? So we can show leadership during this crisis and uncertainty. Can you schedule in time to network daily? And 15 minutes. I'll send Tracy the link. There's a phenomenal networking program. It's free. It's by a guy named Jordan Harbinger. I'll send Trace the details. You go to jordanharbinger.com. It is the most brilliant networking program. I think it's called 6-minute networking. If you can schedule in 15 minutes every day just to network, he gives you the scripts. He gives you what to say, how to do it. We can control that. We can control who we're talking to. We can strengthen our relationships. Can you add value to your customers? I'm not sure what's going on in your business, but could you send videos? Could you send them a newsletter? Could you send them an interesting article? Hey, I found this article related to your industry, thought it would be really great. I thought you'd appreciate it. Can you do things like that? I hate the word pivot, but here we are. Did you have to move to online? What can you do differently in the business? And you can build your brand. You could think, okay, well, maybe I haven't been doing enough of this stuff. What can I do to build my brand? You can work on the business. Start looking at your processes. Are there bottlenecks? What's working? How can I streamline it? Collaborate if it makes sense to do. And you can also build new skill sets. You can control that. So yes, we're in a digital world and it's come quick, but can you do a public speaking course? Can you do a digital skills course? Again, offers the most phenomenal programs. Can you have that growth mindset and not saying, well, I'm terrible with technology, but have a growth, that's a fixed mindset. But the growth mindset is, if I put in enough time, I can develop these skills. And so these are some things you can put your energy into, because when we keep focusing on the lack, this is going wrong, this is what's wrong, we're going to really start to derail ourselves. And if you want to have more, do more, and be more, it begins with the voice that no one hears. And you can walk into a room, and if your self-talk is, you don't deserve to be here, I don't deserve this doesn't happen to people like me, that will filter through everything, your body language, your whole demeanor. And so if you don't get this part right, it's really hard to become a powerful brand. And how else can you build it? I call it micro bravery. So if you think back to, 5 years ago, when you first started your business, it was daunting at the time, but it's about acknowledging your wins. It's about acknowledging, because often what we do is we say, well, only when I get there, only when I've got that bank balance, then I've done well. And you only acknowledge the big stuff. But we need to get into the habit of acknowledging the small wins along the way, because what you're doing is you're internalizing the person you're becoming on the journey. If you have not acknowledged how far you've come now, when you eventually get to whatever that goal is, that's why we have imposter syndrome, because we haven't internalized who we are on the journey. And then you feel like, well, I'm not supposed to be here, and everyone's going to know that I don't know anything. So, it's these little nudges, these incremental steps over time. Oh, I did that. Okay, well, if I did that, I can do this. And what you want to do is create this mental reel of all the big validating moments in your life when you've got that pitch, or you did that, you got that promotion, or you did something amazing, whatever it is. And, I always like to say build a DVD reel, but that's a bit obsolete now. So we'll make an Apple iTunes playlist. And if you think about something that's really daunting you, especially where we are now, and you just play it in your mind and you go, okay, but I did that. Okay, wow, I didn't think I could, but look what I've done now. And you start to show yourself that you've done it and you can do it. That is how you push forward to your next level of success. And guys, intention is everything. It's about, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? Especially now, how do I want my family to remember me? How do I want my clients to remember me? How do I want to step up during this time? What do they need from me? Who do they need me to be? And when you've got that intention, you're going to set triggers throughout the day. And you can take your alarm and you can set reminders at 10, at 1, and at 3 that goes off that says trustworthy, confident, dynamic, whatever it is that's important to you. And you just remind yourself throughout the day. What I do is before meetings is I set an alarm 10 minutes before. And it just, it kind of gets you out of the autopilot, and it just makes me think, okay, I'm going into this meeting now. I'm going into this talk now. What do they need from me? What do I need to do? How do I need to show up? And if you can be intentional about the brand you want to create throughout the day, you will start to shift. So now we're going to move into the virtual space. So a lot of this has been in person where possible, but virtual presence. So if you think about something like email, right? People mail us all day, every day. How do we decide which mail we're going to open first? Because we've got 3 choices, right? You get a mail, you're going to either delete it, you're going to save it for later, or you're going to read it immediately. And it's the brand, the person who sent it, the sender, is what's going to determine that decision. And so what you want to think is, when my email hits someone's inbox, I want them to know that there's value in there and they're going to open it immediately. So let's talk about some of the email bugbears, right? And these sound really obvious, but just think about what I'm saying. So correct contact details and spelling. Think about someone who's mailed you and they spelled your name wrong and your name's in the email address. You think, well, they can't even spell my name right. What's in the body of the mail? Subject line. Did you go back, trawl 3 months and pull up because you were looking for the contact and now you sent the mail and the subject line you forgot to change? Is it relevant? Introducing ourselves, the tone. If you have to ask yourself, does this sound aggressive? Don't send the mail, pick up the phone. Things like spell check. We've got Grammarly now. There's no reason to have those kind of mistakes going in. So just be aware of when you send it. Have we done the checklist? Things about, phoning, same thing. Don't use the emojis and the acronyms. Be succinct. Are you being clear in it? Leave a voicemail. Phone list. So, from some of these, you'll see these, you'll read these, but just remember, you never know. Answer the phone discerningly, because you never know who's going to be calling you that day and how was the first impression when they heard your voice. So for me, what's become the most important thing, if you're talking about virtual presence since the beginning of 2020, is show up with your camera on. And I'm not talking about today. I know we're in a webinar. But please, if you are meeting with a client, you're pitching, even a team meeting, and I'm not talking about, and if you've got genuine bandwidth issues where it really is a problem, I'm not talking about that exception. Please show up with the camera on, because you're saying, it's just the impression of, but I'm hiding. This is about building trust. We're building trust and we can't see each other face to face. So how can someone connect to you when they just see your initials or, or just a picture or an avatar? So be really, think carefully about it. And yes, you may think, oh, well, I don't feel like getting ready today, or my hair, or this. And I always laugh and I think to myself, imagine we were back in the real world. Imagine we were back to normal. Can you imagine someone hiding under the boardroom table and said, I'm staying under the table for the meeting because I don't like what I look like today? I mean, we'd never. So why, when we remote, do we think it's okay not to show up with the camera on? We cannot connect properly. So please, you cannot believe the impact, even if you're the only person, but to show up with the camera on, it's just showing your willingness to connect to them. We've spoken about be punctual. Again, prepare. Is there an agenda? Why? And everyone is complaining we're on back-to-back meetings all day. How can we make those meetings effective? Is there an agenda? Why are we meeting? Okay, what are the action points? Right, what's going to happen now? What do you need to send by which date? Also make email effective. No one has time to receive an email that says FYI question mark, thoughts, question mark, and now you have to go through like 18 layers of mails. So can we make mail more effective? Does everything need to be sent on mail? Can you have a 5-minute phone call that'll take away, the 26 mails that could be solved in 5 minutes? And then again, dress for the day. And you're not only dressing for the person that you are seeing online, but you're showing up to yourself. How can you feel powerful sitting in your pajamas or sitting in, your I don't know, Sunday jammies or your Sunday workout kit? It's not about that I have to go and put on a suit or super dressed up every day, but it's signaling to yourself, I'm taking the time to look nice for myself today. It doesn't have to be fancy, but make the effort for yourself as well as other people. And then again is don't not switch the camera on because you want to multitask. Because again, people can see it and they can feel it. If you get called on something and you've been multitasking and checking your mails or working on something else, they can hear it through the sound of your voice. So just focus and attention, multitasking, and maybe that's a talk for another day, but the science shows it makes you more unproductive because you're training yourself in the art of distraction, not focus. And then email conversations. Just be aware, it doesn't have the nonverbal. People copy 8 other people because they're trying to play power games. Just hit pause. If you get something that rattles you a bit, don't send it that day. And always, when in doubt, rather pick up the phone. And guys, this is our business card. People want to find you. They're going to find you online. So really the golden thing about virtual presence is consistency. How are we the same person on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever you're using? Are you showing up the same way across all of those platforms? Because people are going to go find you. And a really important question is, are you on LinkedIn? And LinkedIn is a phenomenal tool, not just for looking for jobs, but to build a network. I use LinkedIn to build my brand. I publish articles every single week. I post, I write articles once a week, but I post every day, sending quotes, just to create thought leadership. And I reach out to people. So use it as a tool. Go on. It doesn't have to be so fancy. Create a basic summary. Put a picture. Please do not have a picture because I always think, why are you trying to hide? And use it as a tool to leverage your network. Something else is about WhatsApp photos. So just be aware, because we're chatting to our clients, our teams, our friends. It's not just a personal tool anymore. It's professional. And is your photograph doing you justice in that as well? So I always laugh. My husband said to me, this is one of his clients on LinkedIn, but then said this is his WhatsApp photo. So again, is the picture sending the image of who I am and how I want to be perceived? And I'm sure all of you do, but maybe you can pass that on as if you've got younger kids or someone who's more junior working in the team, make them aware of it as well, that every interaction is a touch point for people to size up our brands. And then moving into our last section, because I want to leave some time for questions, is our social presence. And so at this point, we know what we want to be known for. I want to be trustworthy and loyal and ambitious and dynamic. But sometimes it's not enough to only have the attributes. It's, what am I doing to create the relationships? What am I doing to build my network? And, the trick for brand you is to make sure you control the package and the message that it sends. And, often when we talk about networking, we kind of go back to the old faithful ways of I had to go to an event and I had to walk around talking to people and collect business cards. And then I put those business cards in a drawer and I never used them. And that's not networking. And especially now where we're limited, we don't have those in-person engagements anymore. Networking comes down to three things. And it's about connection, conversation, and collaboration. And conversations are the currency of change. And the only way we're going to start to move forward is by having more conversations, better conversations. And if you're an introvert and you think, well, I don't like speaking to people, or it's not my strong point, I've got good news for you. So it's about thinking, okay, where can I add value? So if you think again, this is about being a go-giver. Networking is not a go-getter. What's in it for me? Who's the most important person? It's about what can I do to add value, especially now. Can you send an article? Can you pick up the phone? I had a client and I was chatting to her, and she was heading into she was about to take leave for her first child. And 2 weeks later, I came across an article from Harvard Business Review that showed the impact of working moms on kids, because she mentioned she was so nervous about the balance thing and how she's going to cope. And I just copied the link and I said, I thought you'd appreciate this. Have a great day. And it was really appreciated, something small. What are you doing to add value? And the thing to remember about conversations, technology will take us so far, but conversations the rest of the way. It's not enough just to send an email or a new proposal on mail and say, but I mailed them. We're having the phone calls. People are busy. Other people's urgencies aren't ours. We panicking that they haven't gotten back to us, but maybe they just haven't gotten around to the mail. Pick up the phone. And it's about attention and intention. Set the stage. So if you have to have a conversation, are you calm first? Don't respond on emotion. And avoid personal phrases. This is what you always do. Here's your problem. You're going to start off on the wrong foot. So make sure to have a powerful conversation. We're taking this into account. Stick to the present. Don't dig up past situations. And respond to what they say, not what you thought they said. And so often if you just say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you felt that I didn't do X. And they're either going to say yes, or they'll go, no, that's not what I mean. But we want to make sure we're speaking the same language. And then just be aware of one-upping. That person that you phone them and you go, oh, I'm really stressed. And they go, you stressed? You have no idea what I'm going through. Oh, I'm not feeling well today. You have no idea. Do you know how sick I've been? And I hope you're smiling because we know that person. But don't do that. It's so debilitating, and it crushes connections so quickly. And prepare ahead of time. Can we practice the conversation? What do we need to know in advance? So knowing conversations are important. What stops us? Because we still don't like having them, right? And we think we don't know how to connect. Well, I don't know them. What am I going to say? But everyone's got a past, a present, and a future. So if we online, I didn't look at everybody's names, but if I said, if I just met Tracy for the first time, I could say, what did you do before you joined Ort? I could say, what is your biggest challenge now? What are you busy with? What are you planning? Are there new courses starting? So on any level, we can have a conversation. But what really stops us, because we've got all these excuses, and often we think, well, I don't have time. But guys, network most when you need it least. But what really stops us is fear. And it's false evidence appearing real. It's the fear of the unknown outcome. It's the fear of, what if they don't like me? What if they say no? What if it's not good enough? And so we hold back. But success is measured by the amount of uncomfortable conversations and the amount of uncomfortable actions we're willing to take. And often the thing we fear the most is the thing we most need to do. And it's just about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. So who have you been meaning to reach out to? Who do you need to call? What is that conversation you need to have? And then just remind yourself, you can't control the end result, but you can control taking action. And if, I love this slide, because if I said, think about everything you've got now, that is sitting in the middle. Everything, your life, your business, everything is sitting in your comfort zone. And everything you want, and I said, okay, think about everything you're desiring right now. That's on the other circle, and that's in the courage zone. And so how are we going to move from our comfort zone into our courage zones? And that's what requires of us now. If we want to step into the brand we want to be, step into the person we want to be, it's just about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And then if you think back to the words in the beginning, what do you want to be known for? You want to be trustworthy, because trust is the most valuable asset you can build with clients, with anybody right now. And it's credibility and consistent behavior over time. But how else can we earn trust? And it's the little things, guys. It's not these major things we need to do. It's when you're having a conversation, are we really listening? And there's a great exercise. One day when we're sitting in a room together, we can do it. But if, often you ask yourself, am I really listening, or am I waiting for my turn to talk? Or someone tells you something, but while you're hearing them, you're just thinking, I know how to fix this. I can fix this. And guys, a lot of the time people don't want the solution. They want to be heard. Because when you're not heard, you feel invisible. And so instead of thinking about what you want to say next, how can I solve this for them? Just listen and hold space. So I'm not going to go through this now. You can read this in your own time. And, just think it's a thing. Write down 10 people from your past you want to reach out to. Who have you fallen out of contact with? An old boss, an old client, someone, that you used to do other business with? Just reach out. Hey, how are you doing with COVID right now? What's going on for you? How can you and it's not about thinking, oh, well, I haven't spoken to them in 5 years. They're going to think I want something. Not at all. This is just about rekindling relationships. So go look at that 6-minute networking. This is an exercise you can do right now. Put 10 minutes into your calendar every day. Who can I reach out to today? And you'll be amazed what happens. And then other ways to build your brand is about exposure. So what are you doing to create visibility for yourself? The art of self-promotion. If you've done great work, can you post it on the socials? Can you put it on LinkedIn? Can you write thought leadership pieces? What can you do to start promoting the wins and the stuff that you're doing? Do you want to start videos? Can you do a tip of the day? Whatever it is. But we can't just rely on, okay, well, I've done this on SEO, so I know people are going to find me. It's two ways. Yeah, do that stuff if that's what you want to do. But it's also making it easy and accessible for people to find us and to share what you're doing. It's not boasting. And lastly, sponsors and mentors. And, to praise Ort, Jet, that's available to us. We've got mentors and people that can help us. But again, who else can you reach out to that you really admire? And it's just about saying, you've navigated this industry so incredibly well. What advice or guidance do you have for me? Could we meet once a month for 20 minutes and have coffee, or, a Zoom call? And if you ask in a way that honors them, people do want to help. People do appreciate it. So move past the fear, reach out. And what's your worst case? They say no. But it could be no, not now. But you just never know. And so our careers are like a maze, and they go backwards, forwards, sideways, and sometimes, as I said, backwards, but when it makes sense to. But at every new phase, we have this opportunity to meet new contacts, discover new skills, but we can keep reinventing ourselves as a brand. And it's not about saying you're not being authentic. It's about evolving. Okay, if I think about me, I went from advertising to author to trainer to coach. And I kept evolving over time because that's what was important to me. And it's about, what are you doing to stay relevant? So yes, if you want to keep evolving, okay, are you reading the right journals, the right articles, the right publications? But then also, what are you doing to keep yourself relevant and inspired? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you listening to the news that's draining you? Are you watching too much television or, the radio where everybody's complaining? What are you doing to fuel yourself? So there's amazing podcasts, personal growth content out there that's available for free. And what are you doing to energize yourself? Because every next level is going to demand a different you. So if I said to you, think about who you were 5 years ago, I'm telling you, you are not the same person. You've grown, you've had experiences, you've learned, you've had lessons. And so if I equally say, imagine you, not even 5 years, imagine you in 3 years' time, arguably, then you're not going to be the same person. So sit down and think to yourself, okay, who do I want to be in 2024? What does that brand look like? What do they wear? Where are they living? What are they doing? What are they thinking? How do they experience their days? What matters to them? And then what you want to do is you say, okay, so if I'm here, but brand me, future me, is this kind of a person, what am I doing today? 1% every day to start working towards that. And so the trick becomes is you can't act authentically to who you are today. You need to start being authentic to them. And so if the you in 3 years' time is doing these amazing presentations, is on the speaker, if you're speaking, if you're in meetings, you're meeting interesting CEOs, interesting clients, they have no issue with public speaking and meeting really high level people. Maybe the you of today is feeling a bit nervous. So when that opportunity comes up, you go, no, you need to be authentic to them. So yes, I feel uncomfortable now doing that, but you do it again and again and again. And it's just exposure. That fear goes away because it's just the fear of what if. So you want to be authentic to future brand you, even if it's uncomfortable to who you are today. And to start to close off, this really encapsulates everything we've spoken about. And this comes from Austin Kleon, who said, build a good name, keep your name clean. Don't make compromises. Don't worry about making a bunch of money or being successful. Be concerned with doing good work. And if you can build a good name, eventually that name will be its own currency. And so Woody Allen said 80% of life is just showing up. And Tom Peters, who's the branding guru, said showing up also means starting. And, I always used to say, well, back in the day when we could get to the gym, I'd say, did you get to the gym today? Because if you did, you were 80% of your way there to a good workout, because that's the hard part, right, is getting there. And all you have to do is show up to the workout. But it's the same with opportunity, is that we're 80% there if we just show up to do it. So show up to the opportunities that present themselves, show up to participating, show up to doing things even if they scare you. Because this is about creating the best version of yourself, but then showing up as the best version of yourself every day. And what we've looked at is our brand is the culmination of everything we do and everything we say. And so what I'm asking you today is think about what you want to be known for and act congruently. Think who you need to reach out to and then start to take action. And I assure you that if you do, you will all continue to have phenomenal brands and truly own your space. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to stop sharing. How are we for time? Brilliant. So I'm going to open the floor to questions. And I know I spoke about a lot